I thought it was just dinner, until she reached across the table and took my hand, and everything changed. The story opens on an ordinary evening, the male narrator, 24, finishing the last of his work tasks at a small apartment cluttered with books and notes. The scene is quiet, almost peaceful, except for the faint hum of the city outside. As he stretches and reaches for his phone, a message notification catches his attention, a name he recognizes instantly. Her name, 42, confident and poised, someone he's known only casually until now. The message is simple, almost offhand, yet there's a warmth beneath the words, an invitation to dinner at a small, softly lit restaurant she favors. He reads it twice, noting the subtle charm in her phrasing. It isn't formal, it isn't commanding, there's a lightness to it, a suggestion of company rather than obligation. His heart flutters unexpectedly. There's a hesitancy in him, a quiet inner debate, is this just dinner, or something more? As he contemplates his reply, the camera lingers on small details that reveal his internal state. His fingers hesitate over the phone screen. He notices the way the evening light catches on the scattered papers on his desk, a visual mirror of his swirling thoughts. There's anticipation, a nervous energy he can't quite name, and a flicker of excitement mingled with caution. Cut to the restaurant. Warm amber light spills onto a quiet street, illuminating the doorway she steps out of. Her appearance is graceful, age-appropriate, and effortlessly captivating. She wears a scarf that drapes softly over her shoulders, a subtle perfume scenting the air around her. She smiles when she sees him, a soft, genuine curve of her lips that immediately disarms him. Her posture is confident, yet there's a hint of vulnerability in the way she adjusts her scarf, a quiet signal that she trusts him in this small, unspoken way. As he approaches, their greeting is understated but loaded with subtle energy. She offers a slight bow of her head, and he notices the faint warmth radiating from her hand as they shake, a touch brief but electric. She holds his gaze just a moment longer than necessary, a silent acknowledgement that she's chosen to spend time with him. In return, he feels a flutter in his chest, a mixture of nerves and curiosity, and he realizes that this evening might be more significant than he expected. The narrative closes this keynote by focusing on his internal reflection as they enter the restaurant together. He notices the soft glow of candles along the tables, the gentle murmur of conversations around them, and the subtle sway of her movements as she walks ahead. His mind races with questions. Why did she invite me? Am I imagining something? Yet there's a quiet thrill in the uncertainty, a willingness to step into an evening that promises warmth, connection, and perhaps the first stirrings of something deeper. This opening chapter establishes their personalities, the understated charm of the woman, and the narrator's emotional observance, all while setting the stage for subtle romantic tension to unfold naturally. The age difference is present but understated, more a background note than a barrier. The audience feels the quiet anticipation and the soft human warmth that will carry through the story. The restaurant is quiet, softly lit, with warm amber tones reflecting off the polished wooden tables. The male narrator, 24, finds himself sitting across from her, the 42-year-old woman whose invitation still lingers in his mind like a question mark he cannot quite resolve. She is composed, graceful, yet there's a spark in her eyes, an unspoken curiosity that mirrors his own. Conversation begins casually, about mundane things at first, work, books, small observations about the city outside. But gradually, as the soft clink of cutlery punctuates the air, their dialogue shifts. She laughs at a story he tells, and it's not just a polite laugh, there's warmth, an ease that draws him in. He notices how her eyes crinkle slightly at the corners, how the light catches the subtle highlights in her hair. The simple act of watching her, noticing her movements, feels mesmerizing. It's in a small, almost accidental gesture that the tension begins to bloom. She points to a dish on the menu, her finger brushing against his hand just briefly. The contact is fleeting, almost negligible, but he feels it in a way that makes his chest tighten. Her touch is soft, deliberate yet natural, and he finds his palm warming where hers nearly lingered. It's a subtle spark, a quiet confirmation that there's more than mere friendship simmering beneath the surface. He leans forward slightly, unconsciously mirroring her posture, drawn not just by curiosity but by a nascent sense of connection. The scent of her perfume drifts faintly across the table, a mix of floral and something woodsy, that makes him pause for a heartbeat, aware of his own racing pulse. She tilts her head, studying him with an intensity that is both comforting and unnerving. There's an unspoken understanding forming between them, an awareness that this dinner is quietly shifting into something charged with possibility. The emotional tension grows as they share more personal anecdotes. She describes a small triumph at work, and he notices her hands as they gesture expressively. There's a fluid elegance in the way she moves, and he is struck by the way small details, like the curve of her smile or the subtle way she brushes hair behind her ear, speak volumes about her character. He wants to reach out, to capture that fleeting connection, but he hesitates, conscious of boundaries, conscious of the uncharted territory between them. In this moment, the age gap fades slightly from conscious thought. What matters is the quiet intimacy, the ease of laughter, and the subtle, electric energy that pulses in every small touch, glance, and smile. The tension is not urgent, it is simmering, like a gentle flame that promises warmth if nurtured carefully. By the end of the dinner, there is a lingering awareness between them, almost like a silent question hanging in the air: what is this feeling, and what might it become? As they leave the restaurant, walking side by side into the crisp night air, their proximity feels natural, inevitable. Her presence is calming yet electrifying, and he knows, even if only subconsciously, that this evening has changed something fundamental, something neither of them can quite articulate yet, but both feel deeply. The evening has settled into a comfortable rhythm. The male narrator, 24, and the woman, 42, have moved past the initial polite conversation and into a more personal, unguarded space. They sit across from each other in the softly lit restaurant booth, the quiet murmur of other diners fading into the background, leaving only the subtle hum of conversation and the occasional clink of silverware. The warmth of the restaurant contrasts with the cool night air just outside, creating a cocoon-like intimacy around them. A lull in the conversation brings an almost imperceptible pause, a moment of silence that is heavier than words. She leans back slightly, her hands resting lightly on the table, and begins to share something more personal, perhaps a recent challenge, a moment of loss, or a fleeting insecurity she rarely reveals. Her voice is steady but carries a delicate tremor, a hint of vulnerability that catches him off guard. For the first time, he sees beyond her confident exterior to the woman behind the poised smile. He listens intently, feeling a quiet pull in his chest. The emotional intimacy deepens not through grand gestures, but through these subtle revelations, these quiet admissions that demand empathy and attention. His fingers twitch almost instinctively, reaching toward hers across the table. When his hand gently covers hers, the touch is soft, tentative, and reassuring. She responds with a subtle squeeze, a silent acknowledgement that this moment, shared vulnerability, is safe. The sensory details of the encounter are striking. He notices the warmth of her hand against his, the slight pressure of her thumb brushing his knuckles. Her eyes, glimmering under the soft glow of the overhead light, hold a quiet trust that he hasn't seen in anyone else. He feels an almost magnetic pull toward her, not just physically, but emotionally. Every small gesture, the tilt of her head, the way her hair brushes her cheek, the softness of her laughter at a shared memory, reinforces the depth of their connection. Internal conflict surfaces quietly. He is aware of the age difference, the subtle social expectations, and the uncertainty of what this connection could mean. Yet those concerns are softened by the ease with which they communicate, by the way her presence makes him feel both seen and understood. He notices the tiny details that reveal her authenticity, a hand brushing her hair behind her ear, a soft exhale when she recounts a difficult moment, a fleeting glance that lingers a heartbeat too long. By the end of the evening, an unspoken bond has formed. It's not urgency or pressure that connects them, but the recognition that they have entered a shared emotional space, a place of trust and gentle curiosity. The narrator leaves with a heightened awareness of her presence, the lingering warmth of her hand, the cadence of her voice echoing in his mind, and the subtle ache of longing for another moment like this. This chapter marks a turning point. The relationship begins to move from polite acquaintance to something quietly profound, with each gesture and shared word carrying weight. The audience can feel the growing intimacy, the tension between hesitation and desire, and the beauty of connection built slowly, tenderly, and respectfully. The night air is cool as they leave the restaurant, the city softly glowing under streetlights. The male narrator, 24, walks beside her, a mix of anticipation and nervous energy threading through him. The 42-year-old woman exudes calm confidence, yet there's a gentle vulnerability in her movements that he has begun to notice. The way she adjusts her coat, the way she pauses slightly as they navigate the quiet streets. As they reach the corner where their paths might diverge, she does something unexpected but entirely natural. She takes his hand. Not brushing past it or accidental, but intentionally, deliberately. Her fingers find his, fitting almost effortlessly, and the warmth of her touch spreads through him like a quiet electric current. There's no rush, no urgency, just a steady, grounding intimacy that speaks volumes without a single word. He feels her palm against his, the subtle pressure of her thumb brushing over the back of his hand. It's a gesture that conveys trust, reassurance, and a tentative invitation to closeness. Their strides slow, in sync with each other, as if the world has contracted around them, leaving only the sensation of their intertwined hands and the quiet rhythm of their steps. Emotionally, this is a turning point. He is aware of the weight of the age gap and the delicate boundaries of propriety, yet none of it diminishes the pull he feels toward her. The touch is a language in itself, carrying meaning he has longed to understand, comfort, interest, and a quiet acknowledgement of something deeper. Her fingers tighten slightly for a heartbeat when he shifts his grip, a wordless signal that she is present, engaged, and perhaps feeling the same flutter of anticipation. The sensory details of the moment are rich. He notices the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the crisp night air, the subtle warmth of her skin under his fingertips, and the sound of her quiet breath as they walk. Her laughter occasionally rises above the hum of the city, a soft, melodic sound that makes him want to lean closer, to preserve the intimacy of this simple act. The sensation of holding her hand, once purely platonic in his mind, now feels like an anchor and a spark at the same time, grounding him while stirring emotions he can hardly name. Their conversation is light, punctuated by gentle smiles and fleeting glances. Yet underneath the words, a new tension hums, an awareness that this touch changes the dynamic, that something unspoken has shifted. He notices how her gaze lingers, how her fingers occasionally squeeze his in a rhythm that is subtle but meaningful. Each step they take together, each small gesture, builds a quiet anticipation, a slow-burn intimacy that promises more without demanding it. As they reach the point where he will eventually say goodnight, the narrator feels a mixture of longing and gratitude. The hand-in-hand walk has created a private bubble, a shared secret moment that feels weighty and delicate all at once. Neither rushes to break the connection. Both savor it, aware that this is a first step into territory neither had fully anticipated, yet both are willing to explore. This chapter solidifies the emotional intimacy and trust between them. It shows that romance in its earliest stages does not require grand declarations. Sometimes a single, deliberate touch can speak louder than words, laying the foundation for a slow, meaningful connection. Later, after their dinner and evening walk, the male narrator, 24, finds himself invited to her home for a quiet cup of tea. The city outside has softened into night, the distant hum of traffic barely audible. The apartment is warm and inviting, filled with soft light and the faint scent of her perfume mingled with the aroma of brewed tea. There's a sense of comfort in this space, yet it carries a subtle tension, as though every object, every shadow, holds the promise of discovery. They sit on the sofa, not far apart but close enough that the brush of her hand against his knee sends a flutter of awareness through him. He notices the smooth texture of her sweater, the soft rise and fall of her chest as she exhales, and the way her eyes occasionally flick toward him with something he can't quite name, anticipation, curiosity, or quiet longing. The age gap hovers in the back of his mind, a subtle reminder of societal expectations, yet it feels almost irrelevant in the intimacy of this moment. Conversation flows lightly, filled with small stories, laughter, and shared observations, yet beneath the words there is a growing undercurrent of unspoken emotion. He notices the way she tilts her head slightly when she listens, the delicate movement of her fingers as they adjust the folds of her sweater. Every gesture, every glance, carries weight. The touch of her hand near his knee is almost accidental, yet it feels charged with intention, a silent invitation for him to bridge the gap between them, to close the physical and emotional distance. His own hesitation becomes almost tangible. He wants to reach for her hand, to allow their fingers to intertwine, but he is acutely aware of boundaries and the fragile balance of trust. Each time their knees brush, each subtle shift in posture, the tension rises and falls like a quiet rhythm, making him conscious of every small detail. The warmth of her skin, the scent of her hair as she brushes it behind her ear, the softness in her gaze that holds him in quiet suspense. She, too, seems aware of the delicate dance they are performing. There is a softness in her expression, a vulnerability behind her confident demeanor. Her hand hovers near his, lingering for a moment before settling back, a wordless question suspended in the air. The unspoken message is clear: she is willing to explore, yet equally aware of the caution and care required to navigate this evolving connection. Emotionally, the scene is a blend of desire and restraint. The narrator feels the pull of attraction, but also the warmth of trust and the depth of emerging emotional intimacy. Every subtle brush, every lingering glance, amplifies the tension without needing words. The audience can feel the quiet intensity of their connection, the way longing and hesitation coexist in the same space, creating a slow, simmering heat that promises eventual closeness. By the end of this chapter, the stage is set for the next step. Both characters are aware of the unspoken connection that exists between them, yet neither rushes. The hesitation is not frustration but a necessary pause, a way for their emotions to deepen naturally, for the trust and mutual respect to solidify before any further physical or emotional intimacy occurs. This moment emphasizes the beauty of slow-burn romance. The tension lies not in haste, but in careful, deliberate attention to one another's presence, a dance of vulnerability and desire that grows richer with each quiet interaction. The evening is painted in soft twilight as the male narrator, 24, and the 42-year-old woman stroll through a quiet park. The air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of wet leaves and earth from a recent drizzle. Street lamps cast gentle halos of light along the pathways, creating pockets of intimacy amidst the open space. The city feels distant, almost irrelevant, as if the world has shrunk to just the two of them. They walk side by side, their shoulders occasionally brushing. Neither speaks much, yet the silence is comfortable, weighted with a shared understanding. Then, without breaking stride, she takes off her scarf and drapes it over his shoulders. The gesture is simple but deliberate, a tender act that conveys care, warmth, and a subtle intimacy. He feels the soft fabric against his skin and notices the faint fragrance clinging to it, an olfactory echo of her presence that lingers even after the scarf is in place. He instinctively reaches for her hand, his fingers wrapping around hers and holding it gently against his chest. Their palms meet, warm and reassuring, and he feels a quiet surge of emotion, a mix of longing, comfort, and awe at the connection they share. Her fingers curl lightly around his, thumb brushing the back of his hand in a slow, deliberate rhythm, communicating trust, closeness, and unspoken affection. The tension between them is palpable, yet serene. There is no need for words. The emotions are conveyed entirely through touch and presence. He notices her subtle movements, the slight tilt of her head, the way her eyes meet his for a heartbeat longer than necessary, the gentle exhale as if releasing a thought too fragile to speak. Each small gesture speaks volumes, conveying vulnerability, desire, and quiet certainty all at once. Emotionally, this is a turning point. Both characters are acutely aware of the age difference, societal expectations, and the fragility of what is unfolding, yet all those concerns fade in the intimacy of this shared moment. The narrator feels the depth of his attraction, the trust he places in her, and the profound comfort of being seen so completely. She, in turn, responds with subtle movements that convey reassurance, interest, and acceptance, tiny signals that speak more than words ever could. The sensory details intensify the emotional impact. He feels the warmth of her hand pressed against his chest, the faint brush of her sleeve against his arm, and the soft cadence of her breath. The distant sound of the city, the faint patter of rain on leaves, and the gentle rustle of her movements create a backdrop of quiet intimacy. Every detail, the texture of her skin, the light of her eyes, the rhythm of their walking, deepens the connection, making the silence between them feel rich and meaningful. As they pause near a park bench, he tightens his hold slightly, and she leans just a fraction closer, cheek brushing against his arm. Neither speaks, there is no need. Their hands, their proximity, and their shared breaths convey a confession far more potent than words. They are drawn to one another, emotionally and quietly, fully aware that this connection has crossed a threshold. By the end of the chapter, the audience senses that the slow burn tension is at its peak. The story has built to a crescendo of silent confession, where trust, vulnerability, and attraction converge. The stage is set for the final resolution, where emotional intimacy and subtle romantic fulfillment will find their natural, satisfying expression. The story reaches its quiet, satisfying conclusion. After their walk through the park and the subtle confession in silence, the male narrator, 24, and the 42-year-old woman return to her home. The atmosphere is calm, warm, and softly lit, with familiar objects that speak to her personality. A few well-placed books, a vase of fresh flowers, and cushions arranged on a comfortable sofa. The setting reinforces intimacy without needing grand gestures. It's an environment where they can simply exist together. They settle onto the sofa, sitting close enough that the brush of their shoulders and the occasional grazing of hands feels natural. Conversation drifts between trivialities and shared observations, yet the energy between them is profound. Each word, each smile, is layered with the depth of their connection. They laugh softly at small jokes, the sound mingling with the quiet hum of the city outside. Though the conversation is light, the emotional intimacy is heavy and undeniable. Slowly, he leans toward her, resting his head lightly on her shoulder. She tilts her head, hair brushing against his temple, and allows him to settle there. The weight of her presence is grounding, her warmth comforting. He can feel the steady rise and fall of her chest, the subtle warmth of her skin through the soft fabric of her sweater. Every small movement, every faint sound of breath or shift in posture, deepens the sense of closeness. Their hands find each other again, fingers intertwining effortlessly. The gentle pressure of her thumb against his knuckles communicates reassurance, presence, and a quiet delight in their mutual closeness. They hold each other in a way that feels both protective and tender, a physical manifestation of the trust and emotional intimacy they have nurtured over the past evenings. Emotionally, the moment is rich and fulfilling. The male narrator feels a mixture of gratitude, contentment, and subtle awe at the bond they have formed. The woman, confident yet quietly vulnerable, reciprocates with warmth, acceptance, and gentle humor. The age gap, once a silent consideration, now feels like a background note, important perhaps in context, but irrelevant in the depth of feeling they share. The sensory details amplify the intimacy. He notices the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air, the softness of the sofa beneath them, the slight warmth radiating from her body, and the comforting rhythm of their breathing as they sit together. The soft light highlights the curves of her face and the gentle glimmer in her eyes, creating a scene that is quietly cinematic, emotionally resonant, and deeply human. There is no need for words of declaration or grand gestures. The slow-burn tension has found its resolution in quiet presence, in hands held, shoulders brushed, and shared laughter. They sit together, fully aware of one another, fully comfortable in the emotional space they have created. It is a moment of fulfillment that is both intimate and entirely respectful, a culmination of the trust, patience, and subtle desire that has guided their story from the first unexpected invitation. As the evening stretches on, they remain close, savoring the warmth of each other's presence. The story closes with a lingering sense of possibility and contentment, leaving the audience with the resonance of connection built through attention, care, and quiet courage. The romance has reached its peak, not in dramatic confession, but in the steady, profound joy of being together, side by side, in a shared, wordless understanding.